Hiya guys, how you doing? It's been a little bit of a while since I've posted a video, so I thought I'd collect some plants together, some of my favourites, and show you how to put together a planter for winter and spring colour. So it doesn't have to be a drab time. You can have some wonderful pots and containers. I'm sure some of you actually do this, but I thought I'd show you my method of actually creating some lovely winter colour and some spring colour. So straight away, let's get onto the plants, and I'll show you some of the favourites I've picked out that I'm going to use in my container to give me colour and interest during the winter and then into the spring. So we start off with Choisya Tenata Sundance. This is going to give us lovely golden colour and golden foliage. And then moving on to my ultra star plant, this is going to be the focal plant for my planter, which is Skimmia japonica rubella, sulphur red flowers, lovely glossy leaves. And then we move down to the ivy, variegated ivy, and I'll show you a tricks of the trade with regards to ivy. If you buy a pot, you're not only buying one plant, you're going to be buying 4 or 5 plants on an individual plot. Then we move across to Ajuga reptans, burgundy glow, which just gets deeper purple once the weather gets colder. Euonymus fortunei, emerald gaiety, and there it is, lovely golden variegation. And what do you think of this, folks? This lovely ceanothus, which is a Californian lilac. It's normally in flower in spring, but it's actually thrown a flower out for us at this particular point in time. Now the ultimate stars are on the front row, and we've got Panetia mucronata, which has these lovely, almost unreal purple berries. I've then got some cyclamen coum. They're a hardy cyclamen that you can leave outside all winter long, and they'll keep flowering for you. And then finally we've got the wonderful gorgeous red berries of Gaultheria procumbens, and again that's going to be in berry for most of the winter months. So there you go, there's the stars, but we're just going to top up with a few little things. So I've chosen a really deep planter because we're going to put some bulbs in. So I'm going to put some tulips in there, and towards the top end of our planting we're going to have some dwarf irises in there as well. So we're going to be using some bulbs in there, and these are the things that you'll have forgotten that you've done, and then they'll just give you that little pop and that little bit of surprise once they actually pop through and you've forgotten about them. So we're going to start planting, and we're going to have a look at my container, and the very first thing we're going to do is actually put a little bit of a drainage layer in there, so that we've got some drainage running through, especially with tulips in there. And I've added some of the gravel that I'm using in the bottom of the pot into the compost that I've got that we're going to use today as well. So let's have a look at the pot, and let's have a look at incorporating some drainage. So here it is. It's quite a deep pot. We need a deep pot because of the tulips, and the first thing we're going to do, as I said, is actually incorporate some drainage. And this is horticultural grit. So basically you want at least 3 or 4. Give it a really good drainage layer, and then actually spread that out, folks. And then I've got some multi-purpose compost, and I added some horticultural grit to this because it was a little bit claggy this morning. And then we need to just fill up and put around 4 or 5 good handfuls in there. And just as you go, just literally mix it around, flatten it out. And straight away we're at the point where we're going to plant. Because we're going to put our tulips in there. Now remember, the rule of thumb is to plant 2.5 times the depth of the bulb, so even 3 times the depth of the bulb. Now when you're looking at bulbs in general, just give them a good squeeze, make sure they're not squishy, and there is a top and a bottom. Top is pointed and the bottom of the bulb is actually quite blunt, and then what we do is we nestle these into the compost we just put down. Now I'm going to pop these around the outside, and we want about 5 or 6 in here, folks, so that we get a really good decent display once they pop up in the spring. Okay, and don't plant them too close together because they don't like too much competition, but make sure they're really nestled in. And that's the tulips done. So we're going to have a wonderful spring display. Remember, tulips are quite late, you know, it will be late spring, nearly into summer, and once these pop their heads up. Now we top the pot up, okay, and effectively we are now looking to get up to this rim here. So that's what the rim of that pot is for. So we're going to fill our compost up to the top part of that pot, and effectively, as I said, try and get as close to that rim as possible. And then the fun begins, doesn't it? Because then we can start planting our main players, the plants that are going to give us the colour that we want for winter, and basically pull us through into spring. So even on the darkest day, this is going to look fabulous, I promise. So we're nearly there. So 5 or 6, 7 or 8 handfuls of compost bring us up to that level, and just pat it in place, and we can start to put the main players in place now. Now, for me, there is no real rule about how to plant this, but for my planter, we're going to have the Skimmia in the middle. So here it is, Skimmia japonica rubella. There it is, absolutely gorgeous. Now we've just filled that pot up, haven't we? So the first thing I'm going to do is take some compost out. Now always take compost out, okay, to the point where your plant is slightly above the compost. And then what you do is you pop it into the hole and then push down so that you make sure all the root system is in touch with the compost. But look at the roots on here. It's good. You can just tease a few roots out. Remember, I'm not tearing at the root system. We're just teasing a few of those roots out so it's ready to go. So pop it into its hole, and it's slightly above the actual compost, look, and then we push down. Okay, and then that basically is in place as far as it needs to be. And we can top up with a little bit of compost. Any weed, take off the top. Now we start to play with the things that we're going to pull around the outside, and we've got what we call structure plants. So these are the foliage plants that we're actually going to put in first. So these are things like the euonymus. So euonymus fortunei, and once again, nice decent root system on there. And we'll just pop that. Again, dig a hole, pop it in, and then push it down. And already with spring colour, evergreen colour working. And then we are going to pop the choisia in, lovely yellow colour. And as the winter carries on, this will get more and more golden for us. And we're going to pop this on this side. And I'm just literally popping it into the pot and then just feeding that compost around it. And then we're going to use the ceanothus. Remember this, the Californian lilac that's in flower for us. Once again, if plants are stubborn, give them a bit of a squeeze on the pot, and that root system's ready to go. Look, folks, it's absolutely gorgeous. Now we're going to pop this one around the back. Just drop it in so that it actually is popping over the top of the pot itself. And now we've got the main players to actually deal with. And here's this Panettia, this beautiful plant with purple berries. Wonderful, wonderful plant. And that for me is going to go into that place there. And let's have some of those berries actually spilling over towards the top end of the pot itself. And then we've got the Gualtheria, which again is a berried plant. Give it a good squeeze, look. And then we basically can pop that around on this side here. And just dig in a hole, pop it in there, just feed the compost around the root system, and already that pot is looking pretty stunning, folks. Then we're going to put the cyclamen in. Cyclamen coum, really hardy cyclamen, love to be outside, and will provide this colour for you all winter through. So we'll turn that on its side and we'll just guide that into place there, look, and just pop it into place, and that will be fine for us. Now we've got one other foliage plant, which is the Ajuga, Reptonsbergen Gdiglo, and I'm going to pop that right next to the Panettia here and pop it in place there, and that will get redder and redder and redder and just scramble its way underneath. Now we come to the ivies, so you might think that's absolutely ram jam packed, but we've got some ivies here we can actually use. Okay, and I'm going to use one particular pot of ivy. We're just going to plant that as a whole pot, and we're going to pop that right next to the euonymus where there's a gap here, and again just feed it in. And remember, designing a pot like this, it's meant to be viewed sort of 360 degrees. But if you're struggling for ivy, folks, then actually the industry cheats a little bit, because if you tap your ivy out of its pot, then you've not got one plant there, you've probably got about 5. So there's one, look. There's 2. There's 3. There's 4, and there's 5. So you've actually got 5 plants for the price of 1. So you can actually just tuck these in, as long as there's a root system on there, look. You can tuck them in, pop them into the pot, look, tuck them down, and they can just live happily during the winter months. And we'll pop another one around this side here, next to the ajuga. And again, just feed it over the top of the pot. And then really you're at the point where we just need to feed a little bit of extra compost in just to top up. But essentially your winter pot is done and dusted, apart from miniature iris. Now these just need to be down roughly a finger depth. And I'm just going to put 5 in here, because these will be through before the actual tulips. So we're going to get 5 out of the packet, and again, as with the tulips, pointed end up, and just literally drop some into the compost, folks. So pop your finger in and then push them down where there's a gap, and I go into the compost to make sure that the compost is well and truly above them. And once again here, look guys, pop your finger in, drop it into the compost, and then just leave that on top. And these are just going to actually just pop their heads through. You'll have forgotten all about them, and then eventually they'll pop their heads through, and you know, that's when the surprise comes to bear, isn't it? And pop another one just here. So just a little bit of fettling then, just to tidy that up. And effectively, look at that for a container, folks, that is going to lead you through the winter months. I'll give you a quick turn for you as Charlotte moves around with the camera. So you can see you get a 360 degree view on plants. Now, if you've not got a fabulous pot to actually pop it in, and actually that's a recycled pot, that was a tree I bought for some landscape work, and the pot came with it, so I've not really bought the pot, then you can recycle other things, can't you? And here is a mug. Okay, now obviously a mug, Mr. Happy, very apt, obviously a mug is going to fill with water, so what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to put some compost in the bottom. And a certain radio presenter will recognise this mug. Unfortunately, it's got a crack running through it, so it's outlived its useful life as a liquid container. And then these are called China docks here. They're a lovely little bulb that's in flower around about mid-spring. So I'm just going to open the packet, and effectively we are going to put 4 or 5 of these into that little pot. And remember, whether the bulbs are large or small, these are quite delicate, look. Pointed end up, blunt end down. And we're going to pop 4 or 5 in there. So once again, as I did with the big pot, folks, just going to nestle them into the compost if I can do. Okay. And then I'm going to leave that under cover somewhere. So perhaps we'll only pop 3 in there rather than 4 or 5. And then I'm going to leave that under cover, just put some compost on top, I'm going to leave it under cover so it can't get soaked and saturated. And then in the spring they will suddenly pop and I'll have forgotten all about them, but I'll have a really sunny mug to look at with lots and lots of bulbs. So there's your winter container. Pop that wherever you want to. There's your winter mug, okay, and other upcycled and recycled containers you can use to your heart's content. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, to subscribe and like, because that's good to know that people are looking and using the channel. And finally, because it's winter, have a really, really nice Christmas. But don't believe winter is drab. There's plenty to do in the garden. We'll see you in the next video along where I'm going to show you how to create a Christmas table decoration from salvage materials that you can gather from your community spaces. Well done guys, keep gardening. I'll see you in the next video along.